Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today to learn more about Apple Security Misconceptions with Jamf. My name is Kat. I'm part of the Jamf team and I'll be hosting today's discussion. Before we get started, let's look at today's agenda. First, I'm going to provide a quick overview on Jamf for those who are new. Then, we're going to review Apple's deployment solutions as they tie in with Jamf, creating a strong foundation for Apple device security. Then we're going to go into today's common security misconceptions and spend time talking about deployment, Apple IDs, encryption, native OS features, and binding to networks. We'll then have time at the end for Q&A. I ask if you have questions as we move along, feel free to add them to the Q&A box. Just know I will get to your question, but I may table it until the very end of the presentation. Without further ado, let's get started. A little about us. Jamf was founded 17 years ago with one goal: to empower people through technology. We do that today by helping organizations succeed with Apple. Our partnership with Apple has allowed us to help elevate and enhance the Apple experience in the workplace for employees and IT. We focus exclusively on supporting Apple hardware. And by Jamf focusing solely on Apple, this allows our customers to have best-in-class support, more MDM features that speak directly to the Apple platform, and have same-day support for new operating system updates, betas, and features. This has given us a 96% customer retention rate, which is really unheard of for software companies. And we have also been labeled the #1 Apple MDM. As you can see, Jamf helps a lot of people. More than 30,000 organizations work with us each day, and we help them manage more than 13 million Apple devices. We serve key markets such as top tech companies, Fortune 500, most valuable brands, and more. All of these organizations are with various levels of compliance and security needs. They rely on us to help support them each and every day. Now that you've learned a little bit about us, let's start diving into today's content. First, let's look at Apple's deployment solutions in Apple Business Manager, as they play a key role in device security while also providing resolve to the misconceptions we'll chat about in a bit. There are two parts to Apple Business Manager: automated MDM enrollment and the volume purchasing of apps and books. Automated MDM enrollment does a few things. It helps automatically enroll and manage devices into Jamf right out of the box, while also unlocking additional management features. The volume purchasing of apps and books helps organizations easily purchase and distribute apps with Jamf. And this is the only way to legally acquire apps in volume. It's free to sign up and enroll in these services. We integrate seamlessly into them, and they allow for a better experience for IT and employees, while also creating a scalable offering. We'll talk about more of these throughout the presentation, but I wanted to provide you with a quick cheat sheet in case you are unfamiliar or were not aware of some of these key features. Now that you've learned who Jamf is and have a high-level understanding of Apple's deployment solutions, let's start chatting about security misconceptions and start putting things together. Misconception number 1: deploying Apple devices is the same, or perhaps deployment is challenging. Oftentimes I've seen organizations deploying devices by lining them up one by one, manually going through each setup step, uploading an image, and so on, mainly because they're treating them as they would a consumer device. Or they have another MDM that is not best suited for Apple and doesn't auto-enroll Apple devices, so they default to a manual deployment. The problem is, by not properly deploying Apple devices, it will not only take up a lot more time, but could lead to huge security gaps. When deployed properly, Apple device security can enhance on many levels. Let's talk about this more and how it not only makes enrollment easier, but can enhance security. Jamf has a few options to securely enroll and provision devices, but the most secure and preferred way is done via Apple Business Manager's automated MDM enrollment along with Jamf. As we just learned, this will automatically provision your devices, so no need to manually set up devices by hand. This is best for new devices out of the box. For any existing devices, if you cannot back enroll your devices into Apple Business Manager, Jamf has a few ways to enroll them. Another secure and popular way is by using a custom low-touch enrollment link within Jamf for employees to use. They basically click on the link and it's created by IT, and they essentially hit next until it says complete. It's very much like installing software. Once enrolled, the device will receive the configurations over the air. You may be wondering how we can set up devices wirelessly. First, All Apple devices, whether they're company-owned or your personally owned devices, talk to Apple's Push Notification Service, or APNS for short. That's how you get any app updates, notifications, weather alerts. All devices check in over the air to APNS. This is unique to Apple devices. So when the device is enrolled, the device talks to Apple's Push Notification Service. It then changes the device after it talks to Jamf and enables the Jamf profile. And that profile can have apps, email settings, Wi-Fi settings, permissions, restrictions, you name it. This will give you admin rights to the device. Let's see this come together now with an iOS automated MDM enrollment. We'll show you an automated Mac enrollment later on in the presentation. So this device was opened and unboxed by an end user. It's a brand new device. They broke the shrink wrap, and they're going to start going through the prompts. They choose their language, they'll connect to Wi-Fi, and once it makes the connection, we see a message saying Jamf is now configuring your device. That is when the device is being changed from a consumer device to a company-owned device with the combination of Apple Business Manager and Jamf. It's now receiving configurations, permissions, restrictions, any apps that IT wanted on the device. And note, it just skipped a bunch of setup steps. It's a seamless, secure, and great experience for the end user and a great experience for IT. Having an iOS device undergo automated MDM enrollment is very key for security. Not only will it seamlessly enroll and put a profile on there, but now several additional supervision features are automatically unlocked and available to me in Jamf Pro. And you may be asking, what is supervision? Let's examine supervision, as this is incredibly important for iOS devices. So think of Jamf MDM giving you admin rights over an Apple device. When an iOS device has been supervised, it unlocks an additional layer of admin rights that become available in Jamf. It essentially changes the DNA of the device, saying, hang on, a company owns this device, not the employee using it. Therefore, that organization, they're going to get more admin rights to this device. Ultimately, I like to say it helps save time and cures headaches, as without supervision and Jamf, you may be finding yourselves unable to unlock, repurpose, or have additional security rights to the device. So let me show you some of these additional features. Here we are looking at the Jamf Pro interface, and what we notice is there are plenty of restrictions available. Anything that shows in parenthesis supervise only is now available to me. So with the check of a box, I now have the ability to have access to some of these restrictions that I may not have had. As we can see, there are plenty more advanced features under supervised. Just scroll through, show you a few more. And the list goes on. So as you can see, we just saw a lot of additional features and security admin rights get unlocked because of how the device was enrolled. I didn't list all of them, but here are a few key features I wanted to show that require supervision that get unlocked automatically by undergoing this type of enrollment process. Disable, erase all content and settings so employees cannot wipe the device. Disable specific iCloud features. Restrict specific apps. So in all, how you enroll and set up your iOS devices from deployment not only impacts the time spent on setting up the device, but significantly impacts your security abilities over the device. This ties in nicely with our next misconception. I'm not going to argue that if you're using an Apple ID to manage devices, they aren't cumbersome, because they can be. At the same time, Apple IDs are really meant for personal use instead of corporate use. So I personally find it best avoiding the use of Apple IDs in a business setting altogether, or ensure that they are only used for personal use and keeping them separate from corporate use cases. Some of you may be asking, you can avoid Apple IDs? The answer is yes. That's just one workflow, but it can sometimes be best to avoid Apple IDs altogether. Let's explore this a bit more and understand how. A few common Apple ID workflows that pose security gaps that most people don't realize pose security gaps or could lead to potential issues, and that there is a better way. Some folks may be reimbursing employees for buying apps on their personal Apple IDs, distributing company Apple IDs, downloading free apps only, or some are even asking for personal ID passwords, and the list goes on. The thing is, Each of these have some kind of flaw and create a security gap. Most organizations don't realize that by reimbursing employees for apps or having them just download a free app, they're actually giving the employee not only ownership of the app, but owning and keeping the data within that application as well. So if they have apps with the company data and client data and they leave the org, chances are they may still have that data with them as they depart, creating security gaps. So that's where Jamf and Apple's volume purchasing of apps and books work hand in hand. With the combination of Jamf and Apple's volume purchasing of apps and books, you can deploy apps securely and independent of using an Apple ID. When you sign up, think of it as you are creating a company Apple ID. One Apple ID to rule them all, as I like to put it. It's creating a company Apple ID to allow organizations to not only easily distribute apps, but maintain ownership of the apps and company or client data within those apps when it's in tandem with Jamf. Let's show you how this could work for your organization. What we're seeing here is the Jamf Pro interface. We integrate directly with Apple's volume purchasing of apps and books. So I select the icon and then I search for the app perhaps I want to deploy. We'll do Box. It's a free app that will work and I can manage for my employees looking to access work data frequently there. And I'll deploy it with Jamf and the volume purchasing of apps and books. We can put it in self-service, have it install automatically on the device, and I can just push it out over the air. It won't prompt them for an Apple ID because it's tied to Jamf's company Apple ID through the volume purchasing of apps and books, and I can manage the app if it's also not currently being managed. So we just saw how that would look on the Jamf Pro interface for IT. Let's see how this looks like on an employee's device. Because I securely installed with the volume purchasing of apps and books in Jamf, it's automatically installing these apps to my employee's device over the air. And notice, it's not asking for an Apple ID. Why? Well, as I just mentioned, because it's securely distributed with the volume purchasing of apps and books in Jamf and tied to that corporate Apple ID. Also, because I installed apps this way, it gives me additional security features for app security. So we saw I selected Box. Box is coming down over the air and getting pushed out along with any other apps I had on that profile that I want employees to have. When the volume purchasing of apps and books is used with Jamf, it opens a feature called Managed Open-In. This controls the flow of data between apps, managed mail destinations, and ensure corporate data is only used in corporate apps. So we're securely deploying the app and also securely managing the data in the app. It's like creating a sandbox around the work data. If they have personal apps, that's fine. This is only for company-owned apps deployed with the volume purchasing of apps and books with Jamf. And at the end of the day, I care more about the company or client data than any of the personal apps. Along with data access, Apple standard VPN protocols, VPN on demand, VPN tunneling, there's also features like that available so the data can be segmented. For example, launching the Facebook app won't use VPN, but launching Salesforce would. In addition to supporting TLS communication for an encrypted channel of communication and support for industry standard Wi-Fi encryption protocols. So let me show you. Essentially, we can enforce specific apps to work over VPN. So again, we're looking at the Jamf interface, and you can configure the VPN, but then I can also ensure that specific apps are working within Jamf on a per app VPN connection. Let's move on to misconception number 3. Additional encryption tools are required. One of the biggest misunderstandings with Apple devices is that you need to use additional third-party encryption tools when managing them. While this is a very common practice for a Windows platform, third-party encryption software is simply not required for Macs and iOS devices. Why? Well, because it's included and built for that platform. Sometimes the instinct is, oh, it's included, it could be too generic and won't cover what we need. With Apple, this is simply not the case, as the software is designed specifically for their platform. Let's look at encryption for both Mac and iOS and security supported for it via Apple and Jamf. So on the iOS side, encryption is built in at a 256-bit encryption, hardware-based with a passcode. And as we just learned, VPN is built in as well. And we just learned about per app VPN. And then, of course, we can also have Touch ID, which is a secure enclave for app logins. So this is what makes up iOS built-in encryption security. And Jamf can also help enforce that with a passcode. For computers, newer Macs like the MacBook Air and certain models of the MacBook Pro include custom Apple T2 security chips, featuring a secure enclave which provides a foundation for new security features and also protects Touch ID fingerprint information. The Apple T2 security chip also features an SSD controller with automatic, on-the-fly data encryption, offering the most secure storage of any notebook. It also ensures software loaded during the boot process has not been tampered with, offering the most secure boot process of any notebook. So again, from a hardware and firmware standpoint, that's what is available for the Mac. And then, of course, another built-in feature that Jamf builds off of and integrates with beautifully, in my opinion, is our process with encryption. Traditionally with Windows, you may need to typically purchase additional encryption software or encrypt via third-party software. Not always, you may be using BitLocker, but traditionally that is a very common practice. With Apple, it is built in for the Mac OS, so we integrate with that, and it allows for features, and with Jamf it allows for features to help support it. So at Jamf, we can not only help with enabling File Vault 2, we can securely store, remotely reissue both individual and institutional keys. And if you have any questions about that, let us know. This is really important for organizations that need to encrypt Macs, but securely store those keys efficiently. So in the end, additional encryption tools are more than likely not required because it's already built in and made for the Apple platform. Misconception number 4, we need to have more than the native OS security features. And this really ties in nicely with misconception number 3. We have to have more than the native OS security features to protect company data, protect from malware, and secure our Macs. Now, I'm not here to say you don't need more. I don't know your network infrastructure, but what we often find is most organizations don't actually need to have more than the native OS security features that Apple provides built in. Most people immediately respond with not possible, but with Apple's built-in features and Jamf's framework for granular control and integrations, most organizations find they can just use Apple and Jamf only. Or if they do need more, they find they can scale back on what they're currently using since much of it is taken care of between the two. If we look at malware protection, we want to ensure our Apple devices are secure, but if you're treating them like Windows devices, you may be spending extra money on additional software that you may not need, and it could also impact the Mac's performance. It's a different platform with different needs. Network, firewall, gatekeeper, Xprotect, all built into the Mac, whereas with the PC, you may be using all or some of these on the right. I wanted to note on system integrity protection. It's a security technology that became available in OS El Capitan, and later that's designed to help prevent potentially malicious software from modifying protected files and folders on your Mac. So system integrity protection restricts the root user account and limits the actions that the root user can perform on to protected parts of the Mac operating system. So all in all, this is, again, pretty common. And I'd like to tie this together. I want to show you a bit in Jamf Pro. We spoke about encryption. We just talked about some more of the native operating system features. So again, we're looking at the Jamf Pro interface. And I want to show you where these live and just kind of show you around what's possible. So gatekeeper, making sure that perhaps employees can't override those settings. And again, with the check of a box, I can allow or disallow some of the security settings around software and apps. File Vault, I can require it as well. I can escrow the keys, redistribute keys. I can also take this further with policies and even schedule an encryption if I wanted to because of our agent that allows for remote root access. And then of course here I'm showing you some network settings as well. So just a high-level taste of what's possible. There's always configurations and custom availability as far as what could be possible, and I'll talk a little bit more about integrations later, but just know if there's anything specific for your organization you want to chat about, feel free to let us know. In the end, with a lot of the Apple native features and Jamf leveraging those and building on those, we've actually found that not only does it meet the goals and requirements for IT and InfoSec, but organizations are also saving money along the way by not spending additional cash on software that you would traditionally use on the Windows devices. And it's also enhancing the end user experience because the machines don't have possibly unnecessary software on them. Of course, at Jamf, we recognize some organizations may still require third-party software, and that's okay. So here's what we can do. We can work with you, A, to make sure it's not redundant and it'll work great, and B, if you need to deploy it, we'll work with you so it's deployed and up to date and properly distributed amongst your devices. Lastly, I want to talk about misconception number 5. Binding Macs to the network is a must. It's a misconception I hear time and time again, which brings us to this important question: to bind or not to bind? Many organizations will say, I have to bind, I'm required, and I hear you. At the same time, it's a huge misconception that you absolutely must bind the Mac. While this may be surprising to hear, and I think I can feel some of you shaking your heads at me through your computer screens, hear me out. Binding Macs to the network is not a must. Binding Windows devices, that's a different story. No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you not to bind your Macs to the network, but I think it's worth mentioning that with Macs, we treat them differently, and when we try to apply Windows concepts to Apple devices, it just isn't a seamless experience and may create unforeseen issues. And there is a workflow that we offer that does not require binding, offering a better workflow and also keeping the devices secure. Though the intention is good to help with security and have a standard process, it can actually create more issues when Macs are bound to the network. The issue is, if you bind Macs to the network, it's a process designed for Windows devices. It creates a problem. If you or one of your end users have been locked out of an Apple device, that is a direct result of when Macs are binded to the network and the passwords are not syncing. So this creates an issue on the Mac side. I think of it like a translation problem. It's trying to translate a Windows process for Apple and it can't. Here at Jamf, we're trying to solve the problem of syncing local passwords with cloud identity providers. And this is really important for anyone binding or looking to not bind. There are workflows to support both. So if you're not going to bind, what do you do? Last year, we acquired Orchard & Grove, the company that developed a product called Nomad, which is short for No More Active Directory. This delivers a seamless authentication and account management experience. In the enterprise, Jamf Pro and Jamf Connect, these are the two most common and almost necessary solutions to ensure a seamless experience. So you may be asking, how do I not bind to the network but also have the level of security required for Macs? And this is where Jamf Connect steps in. Jamf Connect ties high-level security that's really beyond hardware, beyond management. We also help with identity management, and that's why we have Jamf Connect. So when you sign in, your device is not only managed, but we cover that layer of security for identity and access. You sign in once and you're authenticated. It ties it all together. So let's see how this looks. So what we're seeing here, earlier we saw an iOS automated MDM enrollment for a new device. I'm going to show you this on the Mac side. This is a Mac automated MDM enrollment, but with Jamf Connect added on during the login. So we see the employee setting up the device as it would, brand new out of the box. And while that's going on, essentially the reason why we acquired this company was first and foremost, we recognize the entire industry is going towards cloud identity. We recognized the industry was taking this route, and we wanted to take this technology to the next level and integrate your cloud identity in the Mac OS login window. We're going to let that finish setting up. As we see, it's making that connection almost there. But that's essentially what we're aiming for here. And there's that login window getting added on with Jamf Connect. So once they log in, that's really it. The password then getting entered is going to sync. So we recognize that in the enterprise password sync, it's not the most seamless on Mac OS. We want you to understand that Jamf Connect is here to validate the password here and being synced across login window, keychain, and updated Kerberos tickets. That's what we're seeing here. And as we just saw, that was a seamless login and it happened pretty quick. We can also leverage multi-factor authentication as well to help amplify security even more. So consider what you just saw in the video. This can be done with Okta or other identity providers we currently or will soon offer. This can be deployed to existing devices as well. We saw for now just the brand new device out of the box. Just know that we can also have Jamf Connect work and it's possible for existing devices too. And I'll talk about that more in just a second. And of course, we have multi-factor available for amplifying security. So for devices already deployed and perhaps didn't go through Apple Business Manager's automated enrollment process, we have a workflow as well with Jamf where you can push out this feature and have it take effect with a simple restart. This is a menu item and that will notify them for the number of expirations left, making sure that the password is in the cloud and getting synced down. More than likely, the individual will find out that the password has expired or they forgot it and contact IT help desk to reset the password. Well, at that point, they have to go and log in and change it somehow. Where they do it in the Mac, we recognize that password could be out of sync. So what would happen here, you would need to enter the password again so we can get things in sync between Azure. If they utilize native binding, they change the password on the Windows to help if they utilize the native binding, they change the password on Windows with the IT help desk, and they get back to their Mac, and their Mac never prompts them to change their password unless they restart their computer. And again, this is great for remedying password lockouts. Now, I will say this, binding does give even Mac users one good benefit. It's particularly rare, but it may be required. So when you bind a Mac to AD, it creates a device record in AD, and device record is perhaps required, again, pretty rare, but for certain processes. They may need to receive a device certificate to get on certain Wi-Fi networks and VPN. And a device record is required if they issue device certificates for getting on Wi-Fi networks and VPN. So that is the only case where Active Directory binding on a Mac is required. And if you're not sure, let us know. We're happy to help and walk you through it. So we also understand that password sync is a major difficulty at times. So therefore, we suggest using a tool like Jamf Connect that assists with syncing passwords across your identity providers with the local password on a Mac. And this is where we allow you to really have an overlay so your end users can significantly decrease the account lockouts. And that's really what we're after. So if we recap Jamf Connect components, we've got login, multi-factor authentication support, Jamf Connect sync and verify, so we're syncing the passwords for users, notifying them of expiring passwords, crypto token kit or tokens-based card for Kerberos tickets, and availability. So it is available today worldwide from Jamf and any authorized resellers that we work with. Customers or any customers using these providers, and in the end, you are not required to bind Macs to the network as you would with other devices. So as we start to think about the path to success and what that looks like as we have discussed these misconceptions, these are really the key steps to take. Enroll into Apple Business Manager, as that will help not only easily deploy devices, but help with unlocking additional security functions. Sign up for the best-in-class MDM solution, that's us, for Apple devices to offer more granular control, features, and seamless integrations. Create profiles that are going to help meet your security needs and leverage our customization availability to help support that even more. And of course, enrolling your devices. Which brings us right back to the beginning. In the end, we're here to help organizations succeed with Apple. We want Apple technology to be a first-class citizen in your environment. From the time the devices are first deployed to when they are retired, our goal is to help your organization ensure you can securely deploy, maintain, and support your Apple devices. Jamf is available both on cloud and on-prem. Over 90% of our customers are in the cloud, but we understand that some of you may need it locally and on-premise, and that's okay, exactly why we have both. And our cloud offering is hosted in data centers in America or the EU. And if you're on-prem, you just need a lightweight server. It's a MySQL database talking to Tomcat. And we know you may have other needs to help remain secure or on task. So Jamf can help support multi-platform environments, software with third-party integrations. We leverage API connections and webhooks to accomplish this. And this is a small sampling of what and how we can integrate. If there's something not on here that you want to see or ask about, just let us know. Chances are with a script or custom package, we most likely can. I'd also like to invite you to check out the Jamf Marketplace, as that has several of our integrations readily available. And earlier I mentioned we have a 96% customer retention rate. We want to ensure that when you work with us, you have what you need to be successful. And should you need us along the way or want to improve your own self-knowledge, we offer a variety of services to ensure you get up and stay running. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'd love to get this set up, I want to make sure my security requirements are working and integrated with Jamf, these are things we cover during our onboarding, also known as our Jumpstart. Our professional services offer on-location or remote services to customize Jamf Pro for your environment. We also offer certification courses led by our training team. Become an expert in Jamf Pro and widen your skill sets. And finally, we have world-class support. All of our Jamf Pro licenses include support, and if you needed anything additional like 24/7 or premium support packages, we have that available as well. So next steps, we scratched the surface today. I'm sure there are other misconceptions out there or questions you may have. So if you want to learn more, schedule a call, a meeting, let us know. You can contact us, info@jamf.com, and we'd be more than happy to try to help you out. Lastly, I'd like to invite you to our Jamf Nation User Conference coming up later in the year, November 12th through 14th. We have an online community of Mac admins called Jamf Nation. It has about 75,000 Mac admins globally and constantly growing. You don't need to be a Jamf customer to join, but it's a great way to learn and be part of the knowledge share. Each year, thousands of us come together from all over the globe to get together and learn about Jamf updates, hear from leaders, solve IT problems, and get ideas. And this is just a really great way to do that. So I wanted to invite you early, should you like to join us. And at this time, I'd like to thank you for joining this webinar. I hope you learned something new. I just mentioned we scratched the surface with just a few security misconceptions. So if you do have follow-up questions or want to chat, our team is here to help understand your organization's needs so we can best support you as you're deploying Apple hardware.